First up, we have Mr. Steve Black.
Good evening. I'd like to talk to you tonight about some egregious environmental violations committed at the Quantum Loophole site at the East Alco property there. I'm going to tell you two things. One, why it's not a whole lot of nothing, and then talk to you about who's impacted by this. First of all, the dumping of contaminated water from a brownfield site is not a nothing event. There is almost a 300-page environmental covenant that describes all of the contamination existing at that site, not potential, existing in both the groundwater and the soil. The environmental covenant spells out very specific rules for things that must be done at that site during any development. The requirements are not buried in the environmental covenant. On page 3, there is a paragraph that explicitly explains during construction, if you encounter groundwater, the water must be containerized, tested, and then disposed of in compliance with those test results. The water is presumed contaminated. This is not a question mark. It's coming from a contaminated aquifer on a brownfield. Until it is tested, it is presumed contaminated. This water was dumped at some rate estimated by MDE inspectors of 72,000 gallons a day for more than a month. That's 2.5 million gallons of presumed contaminated water was dumped into Tuscarora Creek, flowed through Adamstown, through Dobbs, through Tuscarora, and into the Potomac River after a very short distance. So who does this affect? Everyone along that creek who has kids on a hot summer day could have had them playing there. There is a summer camp that takes campers over to the creek to play in the water, to look for fish, pull crayfish out from under rocks. There are people swimming in the river. These are people who don't belong to a swim club. They don't have a pool in their backyard. They go down to that river, the Potomac, or the entrance of the Tuscarora Creek where it drains out into the Potomac, and they swim. There's a rope swing right there. If you go down to that spot where Tuscarora Creek, which carried 2.5 million gallons of contaminated water into the Potomac, if you go there, you can find footprints in the mud. A lot of the footprints are barefoot, and some of those barefoot footprints can be this big. This was known to Frederick County going into Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend on a hot weekend day. Who do you think was playing in that contaminated water? And there has still been not a peep from the county or the county health department. This is a horrendous travesty. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Poteat.
Thank you. As reported in today's Frederick News Post, dumping of contaminated water into Tuscarora Creek was considered by Congressman Trone simply a bump in the road in Quantum Loophole's construction Bliss Creek to cover 2,000 acres with the data centers. But this is not Texas. We have zoning and environmental regulations. The county and state willingness to overlook Quantum Loophole's environmental damages and defiance of regulations seems to be based on the idea that data center tax revenue will solve all of our county's future revenue needs. But how much pollution are you ready to accept for how much revenue? Have you done the hard-headed financial analysis to figure out the real revenue benefit for the county of the data centers? Let's look at a comparable data center already in Frederick County. The 250,000 square foot Fannie Mae data center in Urbana. The fiscal 23 property tax bill for this data center is about $900,000. Now, $900,000 is a considerable amount, but compare it to the fiscal 24 Frederick County government approved budget, which will be, as you know, which will be about $900 million. The Fannie Mae data center will contribute about 1/10 of 1% to the county's fiscal 24 budget. Even 20 comparable data centers at Quantum Loophole will add only 2% to the county revenue. And finally, remember that business personal property, including data center equipment, is not taxed in Maryland as it is in Northern Virginia. So computer equipment value will add no county tax revenue. Don't be confused by the investment promises that have been dangled in Frederick County. Before you ignore Quantum Loophole's environmental contamination or the so-called bump in the road, please get an independent consultant to calculate the real impacts of data centers on county revenues. Thank you.
Thank you.